Hello again. I've always been a great one for museums in London, and something which I have often noticed is that although they are nearly all free, one sees very few black families visiting them. This is odd. Even museums in areas where there are many black people living, such as the Jeffrey Museum in Hackney, one hardly ever sees black children being taken there by their parents. The same goes, incidentally, for the nearby Hackney City Farm. Both that and the Jeffrey Museum are full of middle-class white families and Indians and Chinese visitors, but none of the Caribbeans and Africans who live in that part of London. Look at this piece of sculpture which my daughter made when she was 11. It's a bird's head, which you might be able to see, carved in stone. It lives in the garden normally, but I thought that I'd bring it in just to show it. Okay, it's made of stone from Zimbabwe. It's a particular type of stone. I can't even remember what it's called now. She was helped to make it when she was 11 by a stonemason from Zimbabwe. She attended a workshop on traditional Zimbabwean sculpture techniques, and it didn't cost us a penny. The funny thing is, this workshop was arranged at the Natural History Museum in London, and it was a desperate attempt on the part of the museum to draw in black children and their families during school holidays. It was widely advertised, and it was run by Africans. It was about African crafts, and it was deliberately aimed at Africans and Caribbeans. Believe it or not, there was not a single child of African origin there. No black children at all. It was nearly all middle-class white kids, apart from my daughter, with 3 Gujarati Indians. This is frankly a bit weird. The truth is, black people do not in general take to places like museums, art galleries, historical sites, castles, city farms, gardens and so on. These are all places where certain white people and Asians take their young children to get them interested in art, science, history and so on, to try and inspire them to want to find out about the world. I mentioned the Hackney City Farm. It's a place where you can go and take your children, and you take a toddler there and the toddler can touch sheep, see animals. You can see a lamb being born, all sorts of stuff like that. It's completely free. It's open to everybody. At the Wellcome Institute near Euston Station, they used to run at one time weekly workshops for children every Saturday when my daughter was younger. They showed children how to do all sorts of scientific things, to use microscopes, to study blood, to measure oxygen level, to look at their heart rates, all kinds of things. At one time she went along and they showed the children how to extract DNA and allow them to take the extracted DNA home. That was completely free. For those sessions, there were more Indian and Chinese children than there were whites, and never a single black child. Anybody can attend the science demonstrations at the Royal Institution in London. They're held all the time. Again, no black children. Now, I don't pretend to know why we never see black families at these places, but it's very noticeable. We're talking here about things that cost nothing at all and are very beneficial for developing an interest in the world and in learning about it in children. There's another interesting point. I wonder if viewers would like to guess what the single greatest predictor for a child is of academic success in later life. Would that be the parents' income, the colour of their skin, the father's profession, social class? It's none of these things. It is how many books are in the home as the child grows up. As simple as that. Children who grow up in a home containing 500 books or more are likely to spend 3 years more in education than those whose homes do not have any books, which, by the way, is surprisingly common today. Those books have twice as much effect on a child's life chances as their father's profession. This means that a child growing up surrounded by hundreds of books, but whose parents are semi-literate, has as much chance of going to a good university as a child whose parents are middle-class professionals. But wait, books are expensive, aren't they? Maybe some parents can't afford to fill their homes with books. The books which you can see on the shelves behind me, nearly all second-hand, are fantastic. The Cambridge Encyclopedia of the English Language, brilliant book. Oh, that one was £2.99. It's what you might pay for a coffee when you're out. I know that everyone can afford coffees. Book of Firsts, fascinating book about the first of everything, £1.99. Most of these came from charity shops. Charity shops are full of second-hand books, and the ones for children usually only cost 50p or a pound or something. It's possible for nearly every family in the country with children to build up a library of books at home for their children, which would give them an enormous burst of academic potential and make it much, much more likely they're going to become doctors or architects. The chief suggestion advanced for the lack of black doctors, architects and other professionals is that racism and poverty are holding black people back. What though if it were early stimulation in childhood which turned out to be a major factor? What if black families began to take their children to all the free educational opportunities on offer at museums and other places? Suppose they began visiting art galleries with their families and exploring castles and historical sites. Would this make any difference to their children's chances of getting on? Research in America suggests that black children have far fewer books in their homes. Is this the same in Britain? Blaming racism and an unequal society for everything which goes wrong in black people's lives is a lazy and unhelpful way of approaching the problem. We need to ask ourselves why Indian and Chinese children get on and become doctors and lawyers as easily as white children do. What are the common factors in the childhoods of those who do succeed like that? Can we encourage black families to replicate those experiences? There is a lack of diversity in some areas, but I rather think it might turn out to be something of an own goal rather than wicked racists holding certain ethnicities back. In other words, I think it might be possible to remedy the situation, but it would take a lot of hard work and it would mean planning for 15 or 20 years down the line. It's much easier to make a sudden announcement that racism is preventing people becoming doctors or so on, rather than to put in the spade work that would be necessary to deal with the problem that we see.